This is TWiT.
So I saw the news that that Google has announced some changes to the percentage that it will take from apps in the Play Store, and basically this is how it's going to roll. It's forever, since Android Marketplace was a thing from what I can remember. It's always been a 30% cut that Google takes on revenue from apps. Now that's, you know, if you charge for an app up front, if you have in-app purchases, which definitely came later in the development of the Play Store, but still that would count. 30% of that going to Google. They had their reasons, same as Apple. Apple had their reasons too, you know, it's distribution, it's promotion, it's all of these reasons to justify the 30%, not to mention the fact that the other guys are doing it too. So that makes it really easy to kind of, you know, have it stay on course. Well, now Google has announced that it's going to be 15% cut going to Google on the first $1 million in revenue for a developer each year. I don't know if that's tied to the app or if that's tied to the developer. Maybe you know the difference there, but 15% only on the first $1 million of revenue. Beyond that, within that month, then it will switch to 30%, but that won't apply to the first $1 million. Am I right in that?
Yeah, my sense is it's essentially a tax bracket. So once you hit that $1 million, then any dollar after that, Google reverts back to taking 30%. But up to that $1 million, then it's just the 15% cut. Okay,
and I had to do some thinking on this because all the percentages and everything. I'm easily confused when it comes to math. Is it the kind of thing where if it's like you are a developer, obviously, you have multiple apps, you sell multiple apps. Is it per developer or per app that this applies to? Do you have any sense of that?
My sense is it's per developer account.
Okay.
So in my case, for instance, So I have my Action Launcher company, which houses Action Launcher and historically has had other apps like Link Bubble and Action Dash, which I've since sold. But they're all under the one developer account. Whereas my new app SwirlWalls is a different developer account, and that's not just because I was preempting this announcement. That's actually for boring legal reasons, because I needed to set up a new legal company to release SwirlWalls. In a absolutely wonderful world, then where SwirlWalls and Action Launcher both earned $999,000, then I would only pay 15% for each of them because they're separate companies. But my figures are nowhere near that, to be clear.
Understand. I understand that. But that's an interesting point that you make. Like, is that? I mean, obviously you didn't do this intentionally, right? Like, you have your reasons for doing it. I could, however, see people doing this perfectly, like for that very reason, right? Like, I make this app over here and it definitely passes that $1 million mark. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a new company and make another app over here and get as much as I can out of that until that hits.
But that's how all businesses work. You find ways to game systems, and you spin up shell companies and things like that. So that makes sense. You figure out how to work in the system, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing you would lose in doing that is there's the sort of developer listing in Google Play. And I lose this at the moment. So if you go to Action Launcher's listing and then think, I wonder what else this developer's done, SwirlWalls is not listed in there. I think most developers would take that if it means they're going to keep 15% of extra revenue.
I think the cost benefit analysis there works in the money favor, right?
Yeah, sure. And a developer that has this company over here that's making millions upon millions of dollars probably has enough mind share, clout, whatever to feel comfortable about opening a business over here to do that with, and know that the right people are going to also find that app over there as well. Whereas other developers, it might get lost in the noise. It might get lost in the shuffle, perhaps.
I mean, it does assume that you are mostly monetizing via the Play Store, of course. If you've got an app that monetizes via ads or something like that, then it's not something you would likely look at. But if you're a game developer, then I think it would probably make sense to spin up a different subsidiary for each company and try and take that extra 15%. I'd be curious what Google are going to sort of do, if anything, around that. But look, at a high level, I think the news is pretty exciting for developers. I certainly feel that the more money that goes to developers and the less to 1.4 trillion valued Google and 2.1 trillion valued Apple, the better.
Yeah, indeed. Of course. Now,
and it's also a way to, I just wanted to add, I feel like this is also a way to hold those really big publishing companies, I mean, to take a cut of their profits, because an indie developer coming in and making apps and not necessarily reaching that million sales, maybe they make only $1,500. Like, I feel, they're already probably getting taxed on that locally as earnings. So just kind of let them keep it if it's just an indie thing. I definitely like that this is going after sort of the big publishing houses that, use the app stores as a platform, but aren't really maybe contributing to it. I feel like that's what this was about, maybe.
Well, I think what this was, if I'm being entirely cynical, and I'm also extremely happy about it, but I think the Google blog post contain the answer, Google's motivation for doing this, because, and to quote them, it says, with this change, 99% of developers globally that sell digital goods and services with Play will see a 50% reduction in fees. I think you can absolutely expect that line to be, that line is there, and that line will be repeated many a time when Google are testifying in front of, House subcommittees and the Arizona State Senate and the European Union and pick your political stage. I think it's absolutely fair to think that a large part of this is PR, because Google and Apple are finally coming under pressure thanks to companies like Epic and Spotify to stop these rent-seeking practices that sort of forbid developers from directly, in Apple's case, even informing people that you need to subscribe on the web or on another service. So yeah, I definitely think there's a big PR part of this.
Yeah, I would completely agree. And there's movement, at least here in the U.S. The news a couple of weeks ago. Arizona has a bill or an amendment to a bill going through that would allow, at least for developers based in Arizona, and it might play out state by state here in the U.S., but would allow developers in Arizona to effectively use their own marketplace or their own cash system or payment system instead of going with the official payment system.
I think it's also Arizona residents.
Oh, right.
I may be wrong on that. So it's localized to Arizona developers. That's right. But So I think that's I certainly am on the side of Epic, whereby if Epic want to have a direct relationship with their customer and you configure a credit card, then Epic should be allowed to do that. Like we're talking about platforms where, in Apple's case, it's 1.65 billion active devices. In Google's, it's over 2.5 billion active devices. These are just massive, massive platforms, and it's just there are certain businesses that just can't survive with an intermediary taking 30% for, in Epic's case, like that's a credit card fee is what a credit card fee is 3%. They can't be losing 20% of their revenue. They're not a console. These platforms, these are mobile platforms. They're the future of a connected world, and I really am in favor of any and all attempts to try and allow developers more freedom to charge customers directly.
And you were very prescient back in 2016, June 8th to be exact. You tweeted out, I'd love to see app stores have 85-15 rev split for all purchases, purchase types up to $1 million. Keep taking
that's somewhat uncanny, by the way.
Smaller devs, bigger cut. That's 2016.
Have you asked
Chris
for
Lacy.
them to put your name there? I mean, again, we have receipts here, so really.
They're doing it because of you, Chris. Good job.
Well, there's a 4-year delay on the reading of my tweets then, but I definitely felt about this quite strongly for a while. That how I just never saw it impacting Google's bottom line that much to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think it's worth mentioning that historically, certainly in the Android market days, the way Google really got a lot of traction early was by they would take away this 30% they would take the 30% cut. But in the early days, up to 25% of the $1 purchase actually went back to carriers. So Google made these deals where they would so carriers were incentivized to sell Android devices because they got a very meaningful percentage of every dollar directly spent on them. And over time, those deals have sort of gone down, and they were sort of always different splits per different carrier and that sort of stuff. But I was certainly under the impression that I didn't think Google could just wave a magic wand and do this, reduce their fee because they had these deals in place to share this revenue with carriers. Apple, that's not the case. That's just pure money into Apple shareholders' pockets. So I was. When Apple announced a sort of similar deal, I was curious if Google was going to follow. I kind of thought they would have to, but maybe not straight away, and that's kind of where we've ended up.
Ultimately, yeah, that's where we ended up. Although with like you said, a pretty distinct, kind of seems subtle, but actually in reality, it's a pretty big difference, right? On the Apple side, it's up to $1 million, 15%. Once a developer passes that $1 million threshold, the entire amount is now considered a 30% fee. If I'm not mistaken, that's how it is. Versus the Google method, which is that first million is still at the 15. It's anything beyond the million is at the 30. So that ends up leaving a lot of extra money in the developer's hands, the way Google is implementing it versus Apple's method, which kind of changes the rule suddenly through. It's like, it's like
Google's implementation of this is far superior, with it effectively treating it as a tax bracket. So Netflix will get an extra $150,000, but whereas on iOS you first of all you have to apply for this program, and then if you're a developer who earns, you're far better off selling only 990,000 on the App Store than if you sold $1,005,000, because suddenly then you would lose $300,000+ by just crossing that threshold. So that's a ridiculous implementation detail that Apple have done there. But what can you do about that?